Hello everybody, welcome back. We are now on episode 3. Today is all about how I ended up getting diagnosed with endometriosis, and it will also be in 2 parts, so that is not too much. I hope you enjoy. Alrighty, so it all started for me last year, so 2018. It was, I think it was a weekend, right? Yeah, Sunday. And it was the 29th of July. So that day I went to the gym in the morning. I did my pump class that I always do. And then I can't remember what I did throughout the day. I think I just relaxed. And then in the afternoon, I noticed that my tummy was feeling a little bit funny. I was like really bloated and it was all cramping. And I knew that it wasn't my period because I'd had it 2 weeks before. So I just thought I had a bit of an upset stomach and I tried to go to the toilet and then nothing happened. And so I just took some Panadol and some Buscopan to help it out, but it didn't really do much. So that night I actually ended up going out to dinner at my fabulous restaurant with my family because it was my cousin's birthday. And even though I wasn't feeling too well, I never miss up a chance to go to Rustico's, and I had the chorizo. Oh my god, it's so good. So I told Mum when she came home just before she picked me up, and I was like, "Oh, my tummy's been really, really funny today." I was like, "Oh, look, I'm really bloated," and I was like, "It keeps cramping." And Mum was like, "Oh, take some Panadol," and I was like, "Yeah, I have." So we went out for dinner, and while I was at dinner, I was extremely uncomfortable. I was like wincing in my chair. I was just doubled over, sitting down, like clenching my stomach, like this. And it was getting so bad. My family were like, "Oh, are you all right?" And they're like, "Just go to the toilet, you'll be fine." And I was like, "I don't need to go to the toilet." Yes. So my mum and I actually ended up leaving early. So as soon as we had finished eating, I was like, that's it. I was like to Mum, "Mum, we need to go home." I was like, "I need to go home." So we headed out the restaurant and I could barely walk. I was in so much pain. I got to the car and I didn't even move to the other side of the car to get into the front with my mum. I just jumped in the back. I put my seatbelt on and I just laid down, and I was just like wriggling around because I was in so much pain. My mum was like, "Oh, do you want me to take you to hospital?" And I was like, "No, no, no." I was like, "I'll get home, I'll have some Nurofen, I'll be fine." So that's what I did. I went home, I went straight to bed, and I actually took a sleeping tablet so I could get to sleep that night because I was just in so much pain, and I had a heat pack on then. So the next day comes around, Monday morning, I get up for work, I start getting ready, and my mum's like, "Oh, how are you feeling?" And I was like, "I'm still really sore. I'm going to go into work, see how I go." So that's what I did. I got to work and I told them, "Oh, I have a really upset stomach. I don't know what's wrong." I told them that I was taking the Panadol, so I actually brought more Panadol, Nurofen, and Buscopan, and I was taking all that. And it got to lunchtime, and I came home for my lunch break because I only live 3 minutes down the road from my previous workplace, so very handy. And I sat down and I ate my lunch, and then I got up and I was crying because I was in so much pain. It wasn't so bad while I was sitting down, it was more when I got to sitting down and then standing up. And because I'd been on my feet all day at work, it had been, well, I still was in a lot of pain, but you know, I was like, I could push through. So then Mum was like, no, you need to go to hospital. There's something not right here. So that's what we did. We went to hospital and they admitted me for appendicitis. They did blood tests, and then they realised because my white blood cell count wasn't high, so it couldn't have been appendicitis. And then I have had a few doctors come in, they were pressing on my stomach and whatnot, and they had no idea what was wrong with me. They were like, are you sure it's not your period? I'm like, I'm sure, I had it 2 weeks ago. Like, so they had no idea. And then they sent me, so I stayed in overnight. The next day they sent me for an ultrasound of my pelvis and an internal ultrasound as well, to try and have a look at my appendix as well, see if that was inflamed. And they couldn't find anything, but I was just in so much pain. In the hospital they were giving me paracetamol, tramadol 50s, and oxys 10s. So the pain was controlled. It was only about like a 5-6 while I was in hospital. Beforehand, I can say it would have been at 8.5. So next day they discharged me. They told me that they couldn't do anything for me, see my GP, I might need more tests, and they told me to have the rest of the week off work in case it's like stress. So I did that and I spent the whole week relaxing. I was still in a lot of pain, and I went back to my GP. At the time I didn't really have like a regular GP, so I was just going across the road from my work to the doctor's surgery. And you know, I told him about what happened, and I was like, I'm leaving for a holiday to Hawaii in, 2 weeks. Like, I need to get on top of this. So he was sending me for even more ultrasounds. I think I ended up having 3 in the space of 2 weeks. Heaps more blood tests, urine tests. I had done every single STI test and all those came back negative. Although the one thing that kept popping up was that I had white blood cells in my urine, like a high count, but it wasn't too high in my blood tests, which was weird. I still get that now. I have no idea why. To Hawaii, and my GP was like, okay, have you got travel insurance? I was like, yes. And he's like, oh, at least you're going to Hawaii. It's not like a third world country. They have, proper hospitals and doctors and things like that. If anything happens, at least you're covered. And I told my doctor, and I was like, look, I think this is stress related. I can't think of anything else. There was a lot of pressure. I've been going through a lot of things at work, like legally, and we were like renovating, which was insane. And I hadn't taken holidays in over a year and a half, so I'd been working full time for a very long time and without any breaks. So I think my body was just ready to relax and go on holiday. And because I'd been working out a lot, going to the gym a lot, but that was like normal for me. So I was just like, that's it, I need a holiday. And I went to Hawaii and I was fine. I did have a few days, and like on the flights were a bit rough, but it was fine, like it was manageable. I still did everything I wanted to do. And then I came back home and I went into work. In my first week, I was like, to my bosses, I was like, oh, I think it might have been stress related because nothing really happened when I was away. Like, I was all right. And then after working for a bit, it just got worse again. So we were back to square one, back to the doctor. You know, my pain was insane. I was taking paracetamol and ibuprofen regularly. I was using heat packs. I gave up on the buscopan because it wasn't doing anything. And I was also taking tramadol when I needed to as well. I usually found that I'd probably take like one tramadol about 11 o'clock in the morning, and then that would just sort of get me through the day at work. I wasn't going to the gym because I was in so much pain. I wasn't doing anything apart from work. A week before my laparoscopy procedure, after I'd seen a gynecologist, I was at work. I was actually cleaning the shelves, and all of a sudden I had this excruciating pain on my right hand side, and it was so bad that I immediately started crying, and I just could not move. I was frozen in pain, and I literally just turned to my manager and I was like, can I go on lunch early? Because it was only like 11 o'clock at this time. So I went on lunch, and it was so bad, you know, I was like, all right, time for more Panadol. So I took it, and then I also took 2 tramadols, and it didn't touch it. It didn't do anything at all. And then I was like, something is really, really wrong here. I was crying because I was in so much pain. And I rang up my mum and I was like, I need to go to hospital. I was like, something is wrong. I was like, because I wasn't taking tramadol regularly, I was still very sensitive to it. So I was like, oh, it worked so well in the past. And this tramadol did not touch it at all. So I definitely knew something had gone wrong. Ended up going to hospital, leaving work early, and at hospital I just couldn't walk, and it took me like ages to actually walk from like where you're seated before you get admitted into like one of the beds. And I went there and I had a doctor come around, and he was like, you need to lie flat so I can, you know, press on your tummy. And I couldn't physically do it. I had to keep my knees bent because it felt so much better just to like be in a little ball. And the doctor was like, you know, how long's this been going on for? You know, what's happened? I was like, something's really wrong. Like I was in tears explaining it to him. And then he just said, well, it's all in your head. There's nothing wrong with you then. And at that point, I just burst out crying. Like I couldn't control myself. I just rolled over and I just like didn't face him. And he was like, to my mum was like, there's something wrong. Like she was really, really pissed off. And she was like, there is something wrong. You need to do something. And he's like, well, did you see that vein in her head? And I was like, I think it's this one. This one? I'm not sure which one it is. But I looked like they were like sticking out, and he was like, see that? It's all in her head. She's making it up. You know, the pain's in her head because she's got veins sticking out of her head. And I was like, they're sticking out because I'm crying. And I was like, my whole body is just so tense. And I just felt completely shattered and broken. And I felt like that was my life from now on. Like, that was it. There's nothing for me. Like, nobody can do anything. I'm just going to live the rest of my life in pain like that. And I I think that was rock bottom. But then because my mum was yelling at the doctor, he was like, all right, well, I'll organise an ultrasound for tomorrow, because obviously they couldn't do one then. So I went back the next day to emergency and I got my ultrasound, and it was actually the same lady who did it in the hospital beforehand, and she recognised me. She was like, oh, they still haven't got to the bottom of it. And I was like, no. And she was there, you know, just for a couple minutes, and she was like, well, no wonder why you're in so much pain. She was like, you've had a cyst rupture on your ovary. And I was like, you've got to be fucking kidding me. I was like, great. I just felt so relieved that I wasn't crazy and it was real, and just extremely relieved. So then, you know, I went back to emergency, spoke to a doctor. They put me on anti-inflammatories, and they were like, you'll be fine, you're having a procedure next week, like there's nothing more we can do anyway. So yeah, I have a hunch, but obviously no one can really actually know, but I have a feeling that that ruptured cyst is the reason why I had the pelvic infection, because you can get infections from ruptured cysts, but I guess we'll never know anyway. Right, so after my holiday in DC, so I went at the end of October. I went for Halloween, which was awesome. So we got to dress up and everything, and it was really cool. Definitely a lot different to how we do it here in Australia. So I was fine, and then 2 weeks after I came back, I was in pain again, and I was like, great. I was like, what's wrong with me now? So I went back to the doctor, we did everything all over again, all the tests and everything like that. And my doctor was like, well, I'll just send you back to the gynecologist. So I went and saw her, and she just plainly said that there's nothing wrong with you. I have fixed you. It just must be nerve damage. And I was like, this is not nerve damage. I was like, I know what nerve damage is meant to feel like. It's meant to be like a numb, tingly, like a dull ache, but mine was like a stabbing, throbbing pain, and it was there all the time. So obviously I kept going back to my doctor, and it's like, you know, more tests, just going around and around and around in circles. And then I asked for another ultrasound. And then my doctor also wanted me to go and have colonoscopy, because he was like, obviously if the gyno doesn't think it's a pelvis issue, it must be like a bowel issue. So I booked in for that, and that wasn't till February. So I had to wait 2 months because it was now December. So then Corey, who I went to America to see, he was actually coming over here for New Year's. So I had some time off, 2 weeks, and we did some traveling, and like we went to Rottnest, we went to Forcefest, we had a really good time. And my pain was okay, like a couple of days, it was pretty bad. But I mean, we still got through it, still did heaps of stuff. So once he left, I decided that, and then I went and had the ultrasound, and I also decided to get a second opinion from another doctor. Right. So I am going to end part 1 here. The next video will just be carrying on. So I hope you enjoy it, and definitely stay to watch the second part, because this is the bit where I actually get diagnosed with endo, because obviously beforehand the gyno just did cysts. So now is the endo part. But anyway, you'll see it in the next video.